Hello again, fellow audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, and today's video is a review of the Austrian Audio Hi-X60 closed back dynamic driver headphone that comes in at $429 US and is really targeted more towards professional audio use. But it works reasonably well for home audio use and listening enjoyment as well. So, this is our subject for today. A representative for Austrian Audio reached out to me a couple of months ago and asked if I wanted to review this, and then they also sent over their OC16 condenser microphone, which will make an appearance at the end of this video when I do a sound leak test, just to see how well these hold sound in, because they are closed back. I will be sending the headphone back, not because I don't like it. I actually do like it quite a bit, but just because they said they have limited review samples of this available and would like to send it on to someone else. The microphone they did let me keep as a full disclosure to use for podcasting and all of that, as long as I mention that I'm using it whenever I get an opportunity and provide a link to it. And so forth. So, links for this product will be found in the description below, along with that microphone, the OC16 that I just mentioned. A couple of those links will either be affiliate links by the time this video goes to public release or very soon thereafter. So just keep that in mind. You can help support the channel in that way too. But otherwise, Austrian Audio has made no attempt to influence my opinion on either piece. So all of the thoughts that you are about to hear are mine and mine alone. So let's do shameless self-promotion, and then we will come back and get into the review. Hey, thanks for watching this video. Please remember to hit that like button, and if you haven't, please subscribe. Also, I have a Patreon set up so that you can help support me on a monthly basis, and I've set up a PayPal donation so that you can help me out in that way too if a monthly subscription does not make sense for you. Links for all of that, including the benefits, in the description below. Please check those out. All right, on with the show. All right, jumping in after the fact really quick here because I learned something. I mentioned this sound leak test that I had in the video. Even though I used a music that was supposedly uploaded completely into the public domain, YouTube still flagged it and took away my monetization for it and sent it elsewhere. So what I'm going to do here is, after the fact, I'm going to split that original review video into two parts. I'm going to review the Hi-X60 and show you that unchanged. Then I'm going to split the video and then give you the sound leak test unchanged as a separate video, to which I will link to in the description below of this video. I will likely leave the sound leak test video unlisted, so you can only access it through this video. That should help me with the monetization, and then also that sound leak video can be out there without any legal issues, hopefully. So, did not predict this. I've used this music before without any problem, but it got flagged this time. Maybe it's not a big deal, but I would rather not mess with it at all, so I'm going to make this change. Okay, on with the review. Alright, so as mentioned, right about $430 US for this thing. It is a closed back dynamic driver headphone. And to get some specs out of the way here, I'll read them right off of the packaging. The sensitivity here is rated at 110 decibels per volt, per 1 volt input. So not per milliwatt there, but per volt. And the impedance is rated at 25 ohms. There are two cables included in the stock packaging, which I will show you here in just a moment. Let me go ahead and show you the box that it comes in real quick here. It's just interesting because we get this Velcro strap here that when you get it, it comes off. Velcro. Okay, and then you just flap it, it just kind of opens like this, and then everything sits inside here, which is just different and unique and a nice little touch. Okay, on that, just to make it stand out a little bit. Okay, but I don't want to focus on that too much. Let's get into the headphone itself. So it is designed to be more for a professional market kind of thing, and it's ruggedly built. You've got like aluminum here on this part of the cup. This is a nice plastic here. This right here is this, whatever this is called, I forget. Okay, but right here we have aluminum and all of that. We have an aluminum like metal headband and all of that with some padding on the inside there and so forth. I mean, the construction, it's industrial looking. It is rugged. Like, you can probably treat this thing roughly. I did not, but you probably could, and it'll hold up for quite a while. Like, there's a little bit of click when you turn this thing, but just generally, you know, not a lot of noise in there. So it's got a quiet mechanism here and a little bit of flex this way and all of that. Now you can see that we have wires, okay, a wire going through the cup and then through the headband here, and that is because we have single cable entry here on the left side, and I will show you those cables in a minute. We also have this, works better this way, we also have this unique looking shape here, this oval shape for where the ears go, and there's a fair amount of room, okay, inside there. So even fairly large ears should have plenty of room to fit inside these oval shaped cups here. And like, they're not super deep. I think they're going to be deep for most people, but if your ears stick out a little bit, they might be just shallow enough that your ears will graze the inside of the cup here. But again, I don't think that's going to be a problem for very many people. I think the design there is going to be rather accommodating for a lot of ear size and shapes. Okay, and then the pads also, like, they are quite cushy and soft. Like, they give quite a bit there, and so that ends up giving you a pretty good seal on the sides of the head here. And that is audible because there is a fair amount of attenuation here of outside external ambient sounds, but then also the sound leakage seems to be pretty low. And so at the end of this video, I did a very non-scientific, just kind of quick throw it together kind of thing, just to kind of give you a ballpark idea of what the sound leak is like on this headphone compared to an open back and compared to a couple of other closed backs that are on the market. I found that it seemed to be among the least leaky out there. And again, like, as I have it on my head here and I just talk, my voice sounds very, very muffled to me and all of that. So if you are looking for a headphone that attenuates well and isolates well and a closed back in this price range, this fits the bill. It does that very well. Now, the comfort is also good because the pad shape, again, it fits well on the side of the head and then mostly fully encompasses the ear, which is good. And then the pads are nice and soft. And then the clamp also strikes a really nice balance between holding the headphone on your head without it sliding around much at all, okay? But then also, like, if you look down at a desk, you know, professional use, you look down at your mixing console to, like, slide some things up and down and whatnot, it stays on your head. It really doesn't slide around and all that. But it's also comfortable. Like, I wore this for several multi-hour long sessions while at work and all that. I would take this into my office at my real job and just play music while I was doing work. Really never had any comfort issues with it at all. So they did a good job with that too. So as far as, like, again, isolation and attenuating outside noise and holding sound in, really good. The comfort is good, the build is rugged and all of that. So, like, from an ergonomic and usage standpoint, just physically, I think Austrian Audio did really well with the design here, and that these will hold up for quite a while. If you were to buy one and use them in the pro setting, they'll last a while. Okay. Let's look at the stock cabling that's included. You get two flavors of cable here. Really, they're the same flavor, just different lengths. We have single-ended, about a 1.2 meter long cable here, okay, and then we have the connectors here on the headphone end. I hope this shows up okay. On the headphone end, you do get a 2.5 millimeter TRS connector that has a proprietary locking mechanism on it. So you really do need to use the stock cables, or you're going to have to buy a special aftermarket cable if you like that, because the way these go in here is you push them in, and then when they line up, they twist into place, and then you turn them a little bit to kind of lock it into place, and it stays in there pretty securely that way. I have mixed feelings about that. To me, one of the points of detachable cables is, like, it's particularly for a professional setting, is if you're moving around at your console and you forget you have headphones on your head and you, like, go grab your drink or whatever that's up on the shelf or slide across the room, you know, and these are plugged in. If it's really a truly detachable cable and you snag this, it just pulls out, right? But because of the locking mechanism here, it's going to pull your head down and put stress and strain on the connector there. So that, I think, to me is like not necessarily a design blunder, but like that's in a very well thought out headphone from a build standpoint. To me, that's one thing that just doesn't quite live up to the rest of it. The other cable is a 3-meter long cable, and you can see as I'm trying to untangle it, it does like have some memory to it. Both of them do. It's just worse on the 3-meter cable, like where it kind of twists up, loops back around on itself. It doesn't really tangle, but it has some memory to it. Okay, and so like it does become a little bit ergonomically challenging in that way. This one is also single-ended, and you get an included screw-on 1/4" / 6.35 millimeter adapter, okay, that can be put on either of the stock cables there. So as far as stock cables go, I've seen worse and I've seen better. So it's kind of middle of the road on that one. But I ended up having to use one either or for the test because of the proprietary connector. I didn't try any other kinds of cables. All right. So let's get into the sound then. The test gear that I used for this thing would have been, let's see, 4 DACs. I tried the Schiit Modi Multibit 2, which I did a review for recently, which I will put a link down into the description down below. And then a few higher end DACs to go along with that. It got some time on the Hi-Fi EF400 as well, which is a DAC amp. And then here at home, some higher end systems, it got some use on like my Berkeley Alpha Series 2 DAC and the Denafrips Aries 12th Anniversary Edition, Musician Draco, let's see, Schiit Bifrost 2/64 I think was in there somewhere too. Let's see, amps, Urzatich, Perfitus, Vioelectric HPA V281, Schiit Asgard 3, Schiit Magni Piety, and then also DAC amp Chord Hugo 2 showed up in there as well. The Modi Multibit 2 in particular would have been plugged directly USB into my Microsoft Surface Pro 4 laptop, where the source gear or the music would have been lossless FLAC or DSD files played back through Audirvana or streamed from Qobuz, and then through the Audirvana app. And then here at home, it would have mostly been Rune from a iFi Neo stream, and then into one of those other DACs that I just mentioned there. Or in the case of the Hugo 2, I just got in a Chord 2Go to use as a Rune endpoint there into my Hugo 2, so it would have been the source there too. So a number of different signal chains going on there. Okay, so the sound, again, since it's targeted more toward professional use, the frequency response here is quite neutral, with just a little bit of a hint of upper mid-range, lower treble forwardness. That does give it just a hint of bite to it, but to me, and I'm fairly sensitive up in that 2-3 kilohertz region, or I don't like a lot of forwardness here, but for the most part, I did not find it offensive. It just is a little bit more forward in that area. Again, I think for professional use, just to try to emphasize some of the details and like what's going on there in that very important range that helps with clarity and that sort of thing. Okay, though again, it's still pretty well balanced. It's not too forward that it really becomes a problem, but it does tilt the overall frequency response, at least from a perceptive standpoint to my ear, make it kind of a neutral, and I'm struggling with the word here because it's either slightly mid-forward or slightly bright, just because it's kind of that slight forwardness is in that upper mid-lower treble range. So it's just kind of an interpretive thing for a lot of people, where it's either going to be neutral, slightly upper mid-forward, or very slightly bright. Okay, but again, still more neutral than it isn't. The bass is well extended and present, but it is not like featured on this headphone. So you still get some pretty good low-end grunt and rumble. There's some decent dynamics to the bass and all of that too. It's enough to be effective, but again, like if you're a bass head and you are just looking for a bassy headphone, this isn't it. Okay, the tonal balance through the mid-range is pretty good and fairly natural sounding, minus that just slight forwardness in the upper mids, lower treble. And then the treble on some source gear can have just a slight peak in the sibilance range where it can get a little bit hot and sharp, particularly with some poorer recordings. So it's not never sibilant, but it is just a little bit beyond that poor recording thing, particularly on some lower end source gear. Like the Magni Piety, for example, would get just a hair sharp with this thing, a little bit more than I would have liked at times, but it's not super distracting, nor is it super harsh or painful. Like when it happens, it's just you notice it. At least I noticed that it was there. It wasn't really supposed to be there, but it wasn't like a deal breaker or anything that really aggressively pulled me out of the moment or anything when I was listening to music. Okay, the sound staging here, again, it is a closed back, so it's not going to sound big or enormous, but for a closed back headphone, there's some decent sound stage size here. But I think what's more interesting on this one is that it does a pretty good job with the localization of sounds, right? Like it's pretty solid in the imaging and the separation, giving a pretty coherent sound stage, or at least like, you know, a holographic, a sense of a holography from at least laterally side to side. It does a good job of placing things and then putting space between them, you know, for not just for a closed back, not just for the price. It does a pretty good job of that, generally speaking. Okay, which was good to hear. Not a ton of depth, not necessarily wall of sound, but not a ton of depth. That's you know, not uncommon for this price point. But I think the imaging and the separation on this thing are going to be good enough that like gamers will like this headphone too, because it's comfortable, it attenuates well and all that. So if you're a competitive gamer looking for a closed back headphone that positions things well, I think you could look into this one too, and it would be a fairly solid option for you. All right, resolution and all of that. It's the resolution is solid. I heard some good texturing on instruments and all that, particularly in like the mid through the mid bass. It did a good job of bringing forward like the finger action sounds on bass guitars and that sort of thing. The rosinousness, the zizzy sound of bows being dragged across strings shows up pretty well. Vocal separation is fairly good, so if you have a mix that has multiple vocalists, this will help each vocalist stand out from each other a little bit, but then also give you a sense of how well the harmonies are playing together as well. Okay, so again, it's not set the world on fire good resolution, but it's far from poor, and I think for a closed back of this price range, it is probably, you know, quite strong, comparatively speaking. So really, there's not a lot to complain about in the overall sonic package on this one. Again, if you're a bass head looking for a super bassy headphone, it's not for you. It's not poor in the bass. Again, good extension, fairly good low-end rumble, grunt, some okay but not outstanding physicality and dynamics and all of that. Okay, but it's got a well-balanced sound to it. It's neutral with just that slight upper mid, lower treble forwardness, a little bit of sibilance, a little bit of sharpness in the consonant range on lower priced, less treble controlling amplifiers, but that smooths out a lot as source gear increases in quality. Okay, and then I do think it has very good spatial presentation, at least in terms of the imaging and the separation for not just a closed back headphone, not just a $430 headphone, but just it's good. I think it's pretty good. Okay, so and then you throw in the overall build quality and comfort, and I think it creates quite a compelling package overall. You know, not just for pro audio use. If what I just described to you matches your music taste and your sound preference as well, like it's comfortable enough that you can put it on your head, put on your music, kick back, and just listen to it for a long period of time with a non-fatiguing sound and, again, a lot of physical comfort. Okay, so fairly easy to recommend, I think, in that way. So I liked it. I will be sad to see it go because it was filling a nice use case for me of a easy to transport, rugged, well isolating closed back that I could take to the office at my real job and use there. Okay, let's do some quick comparisons with some other closed backs near the price. Sundara closed, which is, I forget exactly how much. I want to say it's like $4.99, but fairly close in price. It is a planar magnetic driver design. It's got more low-end presence, just more rumble, a little bit more slam and physicality in the low end. All that. It also has a bigger soundstage and just an overall bigger and more grand presentation to it than the Hi-X60 does. And I think that's in large measure because of its planar magnetic driver. Like the driver area is just bigger, and planars tend to sound bigger because the sound wave that they create is generated over a larger area, whereas dynamic drivers sound a little bit more like a point source kind of sound. So also just a little bit bigger sound stage going on here. So a bigger stage, a bigger, grander sound to begin with, a little bit more low-end extension and grunt and that sort of thing. Maybe just a hair more resolving, because I think it does a little bit better job of holding it together and separating things out when music gets really big and busy. That is a trait of Hi-Fi Man. Like if you put on 1812 Overture or like Duel of the Fates or something like that that just has a lot of stuff going on, they hold it together and separate it all out a little bit better. This one was far from poor, but I think this edged ahead just a little bit in that ability and in that trait. The trade-off, though, is I still think the mid-range tuning in particular on the Sundara closed is just wonky and not well tonally balanced. So it just sounds weird and unnatural to me through the mids, which is really important, where this one sounds a lot more natural. Not like, not like a Sen HD600 in natural. Okay, but a lot more so than the Hi-Fi Man. So about that Sen HD60 or HD600, or say like the HD6XX, like let's just talk briefly about this compared to the HD600 series. I realize the HD600 series is open back, where this is closed back, so those are a little bit different use cases to begin with, but I also know that a lot of audio professionals use the HD600 in particular with some level of frequency too. So and they are fairly similar in price. So how does that compare here? So the Sen is going to have a little bit more intimate presentation to it, a little bit narrower sound stage yet and all of that. The Sen is also going to have the more lush, natural mid-range timbre and just sound a little bit more natural and believable in terms of its tone and just making instruments and voices and all of that sound like the real thing. The Hi-X60 is again far from poor in that regard. It just doesn't have quite that lush, natural quality to it that the Sen 600 series brings. However, I think frequency extension is better on the Hi-X60, right? And also the imaging and the spatial stuff, like where sounds are coming from, space between them, I think is much stronger spatially than the Sen HD600 series is too. They are both fairly comfortable, and so it's just going to come down to, do you need the better space and better extension to do your pro audio work, or do you need that more lush and natural timbre to do your pro audio work? And then are you working in a noisy environment? You might want the closed back like this one, or do you have a nice quiet space to work? Maybe the open back Sen 600 series will work better there. Now, I know that the $400 to $500 price point is busy even with closed backs, and I haven't heard all of them, so I can't compare to much else other than what I've mentioned here before. But hopefully that is enough to give you a feel for how this headphone compares at its price point. So we'll get into a sound leak test here in just a moment, where I use that high quality Austrian audio OC16 Condenser Mic to do a video where this headphone and some others sit on my head and I play music back at my reference volume level, have that microphone about here, hold up an SPL meter on my app on my phone here, and then just give you the numbers. It's not super scientific. Don't take it as gospel. It's just there to give you a rough idea and ballpark about how well these isolate sound, or at least do sound leak, compared to an open back and a couple of other closed backs. So that's coming up in just a moment. Stay tuned if you're interested for that. But again, final thoughts on this one. Well built, rugged, comfortable, Neutral, slightly upper mid, lower treble forward sound signature from a frequency response standpoint. Okay, pretty good frequency extension in both directions, and very good imaging and separation to go along with it. So it's a fairly compelling package and an effective piece at $430 that I think audio pros can find some use for. I think gamers will like it because I think its presentation there is, and its imaging and all that will be attractive to them, as well as its isolation and comfort. And then I think it's also good for home use too, particularly if you like that kind of sound signature. All right, so I am Wave Theory. Thanks to Austrian Audio for sending this over. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't, check out my PayPal, check out my Patreon, do all of those things that you do to support YouTube channels. Okay, so thanks again for watching, and as always, enjoy the music. Stay tuned if you want to see that sound leak test. All right, enjoy the music, everyone.